The sun hung low over the Nile, casting long, golden shadows across the sweeping sands of Egypt. In this land where history seemed to bleed into the present, every grain of sand whispered stories older than any living memory. Towering pyramids and crumbling temples stood as silent witnesses to centuries of ambition, power, and mystery. Among them, one name echoed louder than the rest, a name that had survived the rise and fall of empires, the sweeping tides of conquest, and the relentless march of time. Cleopatra. The queen who had ruled not only with intellect and charm but with a magnetic aura that seemed almost supernatural, capable of bending men and nations alike to her will. Yet, for all her renown, one question had haunted generations: where, after her death, had Cleopatra's body been laid to rest? Some said it had been buried in grand splendor, a tomb glittering with gold and precious stones, guarded against both the living and the dead. Others whispered of secret chambers, hidden so cleverly that even the most skilled explorers could not penetrate their walls. The stories grew darker with each retelling, suggesting that her body, and perhaps secrets far greater than mere treasure, had been deliberately hidden, lost to the world, swallowed by the sands. The desert itself seemed complicit in the mystery, its shifting dunes preserving and erasing in equal measure, hiding traces of the past beneath a blanket of silence. As we move closer to the heart of this story, it becomes impossible not to feel the weight of history pressing down. Imagine walking along a quiet, deserted riverbank, where the water moves lazily yet purposefully, and each ripple carries the memory of centuries. The air is thick with the scent of ancient earth, and the horizon is dotted with ruins whose origins are debated by scholars to this day. Here, in this timeless expanse, the past does not merely exist, it waits. It waits for those brave or curious enough to uncover it. And yet, there is a sense of unease, a whisper of danger, as though the very land knows that some secrets were never meant to be revealed. Even the people of the time contributed to the legend. Roman chroniclers, often biased and fearful, painted Cleopatra as both cunning and seductive, a ruler whose intellect rivaled any man's yet whose fate was entwined with politics, love, and betrayal. Egyptian priests, whose knowledge of rituals and death was unparalleled, were sworn to secrecy, their lips sealed with devotion and fear. Each account, fragmentary and contradictory, layered the mystery further, creating a story that refuses to yield its final truth. And so the question remains, haunting and insistent: where did Cleopatra's body go? Was it entombed in a place of grandeur, lost to history, or did it vanish entirely, hidden in plain sight within chambers designed to baffle and mislead? In the end, the mystery is as much about human ambition as it is about death. It is about a queen who defied the world and yet, in death, became part of a riddle that has confounded historians, adventurers, and archaeologists for nearly 2 millennia. And as the sun dips below the horizon, casting the Nile in a wash of crimson and gold, one cannot help but feel the pull of curiosity, a desire to step across the threshold of time itself. Somewhere in the deserts, beneath the sands, in chambers sealed long ago, the past waits silently. And for those who dare to seek it, the story of Cleopatra is only just beginning. Cleopatra was not merely a figure in history books, not simply a queen whose image has been romanticized over centuries. She was a living, breathing woman, navigating a world that demanded cunning, charisma, and an almost supernatural ability to command attention. Born into the Ptolemaic dynasty, a family of Greek origin ruling over Egypt, she inherited a kingdom both magnificent and fragile, teetering between wealth and collapse, between reverence and rebellion. From the moment she ascended the throne, Cleopatra understood that her survival would require intellect as sharp as a sword and charm as intoxicating as the Nile's waters at sunset. She played the intricate games of politics with finesse, aligning herself with powerful men whose ambition could match her own, yet never surrendering her identity or her vision for her kingdom. Her story is inseparable from those who sought her favor, and feared her power. Julius Caesar, the Roman general whose conquests had shaken the world, found himself enthralled not simply by her beauty but by the formidable mind behind her gaze. Mark Antony, passionate and impulsive, was drawn into a love and alliance that would ultimately seal both their fates. Yet Cleopatra's brilliance was not limited to her personal alliances, she was a ruler fluent in multiple languages, a strategist aware of the delicate balance between diplomacy and force, and a patron of arts and sciences who understood that legacy extended beyond borders and lifetimes. She wielded influence not as a weapon of vanity, but as a lifeline for her people and a shield against the encroaching power of Rome. Even with all this, Cleopatra was human. She experienced fear, doubt, and loss. Her brothers, rivals in their own right, were obstacles she had to navigate, sometimes with diplomacy, sometimes with ruthless cunning. She suffered betrayals from those closest to her, the sting of alliances broken and loyalties tested. In private moments, she was said to be contemplative, pondering not just survival but the meaning of her choices, the future of her kingdom, and the legacy she would leave behind. Each decision was a calculated risk, a balance between love, ambition, and necessity. And through it all, the world watched, intrigued by a woman who refused to conform to the expectations imposed upon her gender, her status, or even her era. But as history moved forward, Cleopatra's mortal story began to blur into legend. Ancient texts speak of her final days in Alexandria, a city that shimmered with wealth and intrigue. Roman accounts depict her as both tragic and cunning, a queen aware that her empire could not withstand the tides of conquest. Yet even as her enemies circled closer, and the inevitability of defeat pressed in from every direction, Cleopatra's presence never diminished. Her intellect remained sharp, her resolve unbroken. She planned, maneuvered, and executed her final acts with the same meticulous attention she had applied throughout her reign. And in those final moments, a question was left unanswered: what would become of the woman whose life had captivated the known world? Legend suggests she chose death over humiliation, a queen who refused to be paraded as a prisoner in a foreign capital. Yet even in death, Cleopatra's story remained unfinished. The details of her final moments, the chamber that received her body, the tomb she entered, these are matters of speculation, whispered in fragments across time. Some say she was laid to rest in a hidden chamber, a place so secret that even the most persistent seekers would struggle to find it. Others argue that she vanished almost entirely from the historical record, leaving behind a mystery that historians, treasure hunters, and archaeologists have chased for centuries. Each theory offers tantalizing clues, yet none provide closure, keeping her enigma alive. What makes Cleopatra endlessly fascinating is that she is a paradox of visibility and concealment. Her life was lived under the gaze of the world, yet her death slipped quietly into obscurity. She is at once a historical figure and a symbol, a woman whose intelligence, ambition, and charisma transcended her time, leaving a mark that generations could not erase. And it is this duality, the brilliance of her life and the uncertainty of her death, that makes her story compelling to this day. The queen who commanded armies, seduced emperors, and ruled an empire with an unmatched intellect now lives on as a mystery, a puzzle waiting to be solved. As we peer into the shadows of history, we are left to ask not only how Cleopatra lived, but how she died, and more importantly, where her body rests. Was it hidden with treasures that could alter our understanding of history? Or did it vanish entirely, leaving only echoes in the annals of time? This question, unanswered for nearly 2,000 years, draws us inexorably into the search for truth, setting the stage for discoveries that may rewrite what we think we know about one of history's most extraordinary women. The stage is set, the stakes are high, and the journey into the mysteries of Cleopatra's final resting place is only beginning. Every shadow, every stone, every whisper of ancient texts hints that something profound lies waiting to be uncovered, a secret that history has jealously guarded, challenging us to follow the trail through time itself. Long before Cleopatra's death, long before the sands of Egypt had swallowed her secrets, there were those who labored in silence, shaping the very spaces that might one day contain her final resting place. The architects and engineers of ancient Egypt were more than mere builders, they were visionaries and magicians in stone, men and women whose hands could bend reality to serve both the living and the dead. They understood the delicate dance between form and function, between concealment and grandeur. Tombs were never simple chambers, they were labyrinths, carefully designed to deceive, protect, and endure through millennia. Each wall, each passage, and each hidden compartment carried a purpose, a silent promise that history would remember the dead, even as the living might be denied access. Imagine the echo of chisels against limestone in the dead of night, the careful placement of stones so precise that no ordinary eye could detect the clever mechanisms hiding their intent. These architects were not just creators, they were custodians of secrets, sworn to safeguard the sacred resting places of Egypt's royalty. They knew that their work might never be celebrated, that their names could be forgotten, but their designs would outlive empires, outlast conquerors, and endure beyond the sands of time. There was an artistry in their secrecy, an almost religious devotion to protecting what lay within. The corridors they carved were not just passageways, they were riddles, puzzles, and traps, a silent testament to the lengths humans would go to preserve both life and legacy. Some chambers were known, catalogued, and eventually excavated, yet others seemed to defy discovery entirely. Entire sections of tombs vanished beneath the desert floor, their existence hinted at only by fragments of inscriptions, the faint outline of a hidden wall, or the shadow of a structure glimpsed from above. Scholars and archaeologists today still debate the purpose of certain anomalies, suggesting that the ancients might have built secret chambers specifically to mislead, to protect treasures, or perhaps to guard knowledge too dangerous for the uninitiated. And it is in this murky intersection of brilliance and concealment that the mystery of Cleopatra's resting place begins to take shape. The intrigue grows when we consider the political and spiritual dimensions of these chambers. Pharaohs and queens were not merely rulers, they were divine intermediaries, their bodies believed to house a spark of eternal life. The burial of a queen like Cleopatra would not have been left to chance. Priests, engineers, and artisans would have collaborated to create a sanctuary that honored her power, safeguarded her journey into the afterlife, and concealed her from those who might exploit or desecrate her remains. Every stone, every corridor, every hidden nook was intentional, a coded language meant to communicate with the living and protect the dead. To penetrate such a chamber without guidance was to risk disaster, whether collapse, disorientation, or even spiritual consequence according to ancient belief. It is tempting to imagine the architects themselves whispering in shadows, discussing the cleverness of their designs, the challenge of outwitting tomb robbers and curious rulers alike. Perhaps they worked with secrecy so absolute that not even the queen herself knew every detail, a hidden measure meant to ensure that her final resting place could not be desecrated, even by those who loved her most. And yet, this careful orchestration created an enduring enigma. Generations of scholars and treasure hunters would be confounded, their efforts complicated by deliberate traps, misleading symbols, and chambers that existed only in the imaginations of the architects themselves. The past, in essence, had constructed a riddle, a puzzle whose pieces might never all be assembled. The question that haunts historians today is simple but maddening: could Cleopatra's body rest in one of these hidden chambers? If so, what secrets might it contain beyond mere gold or jewels? Could there be records, artifacts, or symbols that would alter our understanding of her reign or even the history of Egypt itself? The more we uncover about these ancient architects and their secretive methods, the more tantalizing the possibility becomes. Every discovery, an anomaly in a wall, an unmarked corridor, a misplaced stone, feels like a whisper from the past, a hint that something extraordinary lies hidden, waiting for the right mind, the right moment, to be revealed. And yet, the deeper the mystery grows, the more dangerous the pursuit becomes. Tombs built to endure millennia resist modern attempts to reveal them. Sandstorms bury clues as easily as they expose them. Misinterpretations of inscriptions can lead explorers in circles, chasing phantoms that the ancient builders designed to mislead. It is a slow-burn tension, a psychological puzzle as much as an archaeological one, and it sets the stage for centuries of obsession. Those who would follow in the footsteps of Cleopatra's architects must contend not only with physical obstacles but with the deliberate cunning of minds that anticipated curiosity across 2 millennia. The legacy of these ancient builders is as much about what remains hidden as what is visible. They were the silent architects of mystery, the creators of secrets that would endure long after their names were forgotten. And as we trace their work, following the faint traces of their genius beneath the sands, we begin to understand that Cleopatra's resting place is not just a matter of location, it is a puzzle, a challenge, and a testament to the lengths humans will go to preserve power, memory, and secrets. The shadows of these chambers beckon, and the question lingers: what lies behind the walls they so meticulously constructed, and will anyone ever be worthy, or daring enough, to see it? Long before modern technology, before the satellite imaging and ground-penetrating radar that now guide archaeologists, there were those early explorers who dared to step into Egypt's sun-scorched deserts in search of Cleopatra's final resting place. They were men and women driven by curiosity, ambition, and sometimes greed, navigating a landscape that was as unforgiving as it was enigmatic. The sands of Egypt are treacherous, shifting with the wind, swallowing footprints and erasing paths in a matter of hours. Yet these explorers pressed on, mapping ruins, decoding hieroglyphs, and piecing together fragments of stories told in whispers and old manuscripts. Their journeys were not merely archaeological, they were odysseys into the unknown, a pursuit that blurred the line between adventure and obsession. Some came with scholarly intent, driven by a desire to uncover history, to place Cleopatra's story firmly within the framework of human understanding. Others were treasure hunters, motivated by the possibility of untold riches buried beneath stone and sand. And many carried both impulses, their noble intentions tangled with personal ambition. They ventured into tombs long abandoned, some carved into cliffs, others buried beneath layers of desert, where even a misstep could prove fatal. Ancient curses were whispered, often by locals who understood the sacredness of the land and the danger of disturbing it, but these warnings were rarely heeded. For the explorers, the allure of a hidden chamber, of a secret that had survived for nearly 2 millennia, outweighed the risk. The stories that emerged from these expeditions are as fascinating as they are unsettling. In some cases, explorers vanished without a trace, swallowed by the desert or trapped within the labyrinthine tombs they sought to unveil. Others returned with tantalizing clues, cryptic inscriptions, fragments of ornate jewelry, or faded murals depicting a queen whose gaze seemed to follow them across the centuries. Yet each discovery led to more questions than answers, a slow unraveling of history that seemed deliberately designed to frustrate human understanding. The more they found, the more the mystery deepened, as though Cleopatra herself had orchestrated her legacy to endure as a riddle for the ages. Competition among explorers added another layer of intrigue and danger. Rivalries erupted over claimed discoveries, forged documents, and the interpretation of ancient texts. Some resorted to sabotage, destroying evidence or misleading colleagues to protect their own reputations or potential profits. Letters and journals from the period hint at clandestine meetings, secret alliances, and whispered threats that followed every excavation. In many ways, the pursuit of Cleopatra's tomb became a story not only of history but of human nature itself, a reflection of obsession, pride, and the irresistible draw of the unknown. Certain accounts border on the supernatural. There were explorers who spoke of shadows moving along walls where no one should be, or strange sounds echoing through sealed chambers. Faint inscriptions were misread as curses, warning that the living would suffer if they disturbed the dead. While many of these tales were exaggerated over time, the psychological weight of working in such ancient, secretive spaces cannot be underestimated. Alone in the tomb, with flickering oil lamps casting trembling light over hieroglyphs that had not been touched for centuries, fear and awe became inseparable. Every step carried the potential for revelation, or disaster. Yet, for all their daring, these early adventurers often returned empty-handed. Tombs had been looted centuries before, secrets concealed in ways modern explorers could barely imagine. Misinterpretations of ancient texts led teams astray, guiding them down corridors that ended in rubble or sealed doors that revealed nothing. Each failure intensified the mystery, heightening the stakes for the next expedition. It was as if the desert itself, and the architects of long-forgotten chambers, had conspired to hide Cleopatra's remains from human eyes, leaving only echoes of a queen's legacy to tantalize those brave, or reckless, enough to search. Some of these explorers left more than just records of their findings, they left a trail of cautionary tales. Stories of illness, inexplicable accidents, and even death followed those who pursued the queen's tomb too aggressively or without respect for the land's sanctity. Over time, these tales merged with the historical record, creating a mythology around the search itself. Cleopatra's tomb became not merely a physical space, but a symbol of the ultimate pursuit, a challenge that tested intelligence, courage, morality, and endurance. Every attempted excavation became a story within a story, a reflection of human ambition and the seductive power of secrets that refuse to be revealed. By the end of the 19th and early 20th centuries, the hunt for Cleopatra's final resting place had become almost legendary. Reports of discoveries, lost leads, and rivalries filled journals, newspapers, and scholarly debates. In the 21st century, the hunt for Cleopatra's tomb entered a new era. Gone were the days of explorers relying solely on intuition, physical maps, and whispered rumors. Instead, modern archaeologists brought with them technologies that could peer beneath the desert sands without disturbing a single stone. Ground-penetrating radar, high-resolution satellite imaging, LiDAR scanning, and 3D digital reconstructions became the tools of choice, offering glimpses into the past that were once thought impossible. The deserts of Egypt, which had for centuries swallowed clues and misled explorers, now yielded faint signals, anomalies that hinted at hidden chambers and structures buried beneath layers of sand and time. Yet, even with such advanced methods, the mystery remained as elusive as ever, and the tension surrounding each potential discovery was palpable. Archaeologists learned quickly that technology could reveal shapes and voids, but it could not interpret the meaning behind them. A shadow on a radar scan might be a collapsed tomb, a natural cavity, or a deliberate architectural deception designed to mislead intruders. Every new anomaly sparked both excitement and frustration. Teams of experts pored over images, debated possible interpretations, and retraced their steps through historical records to match these modern findings with the ancient world. It became a slow, painstaking process, a combination of science, intuition, and imagination, where one false assumption could send months or even years of research off course. Some of the most tantalizing discoveries came from satellite imagery, which revealed subtle patterns in the desert, shapes that suggested long-buried corridors or structures just below the surface. These patterns did not resemble natural formations, and yet they were faint, ephemeral, like footprints from another time. When researchers focused on these areas with ground-penetrating radar, the results were equally intriguing and confounding, voids that could be empty tombs, storage chambers, or passageways deliberately concealed for millennia. Each anomaly sparked a flurry of theories. Could these be remnants of Cleopatra's burial complex? Or were they simply part of another, unrelated structure, lost to history and misinterpreted by modern science? The tension escalated further with the discovery of certain inscriptions and artifacts that seemed to point to a previously unknown location of significance. Fragments of hieroglyphs, partially preserved in rubble or buried deep beneath the sands, suggested that the ancients had employed clever methods of misdirection. Some inscriptions were overt, meant to honor a ruler, others were subtle, cryptic, almost like a code only the initiated could decipher. These clues hinted at the possibility that Cleopatra's tomb might not only be concealed beneath layers of earth but also hidden in plain sight, cleverly disguised as something ordinary, awaiting a mind perceptive enough to recognize its significance. As the investigation progressed, the human element became as compelling as the technological. Teams of archaeologists, Egyptologists, and historians worked around the clock, often in extreme conditions under a blazing sun, or during sandstorms that threatened to erase even the slightest trace of their progress. Each discovery brought not only excitement but ethical dilemmas: how to excavate without disturbing fragile artifacts, how to preserve history while satisfying the intense curiosity of a world desperate for answers. The pressure was immense, for failure was not merely the loss of a tomb, it was the potential destruction of centuries-old knowledge, the permanent erasure of human history hidden beneath the sands. And then there were the unexpected surprises, moments where technology hinted at something extraordinary. A radar scan revealing a void deeper than expected, a faint outline that suggested deliberate construction rather than natural formation. Researchers would descend cautiously, sometimes with robotic probes or small excavation tools, to avoid collapse or irreversible damage. The thrill of approaching a possible hidden chamber was indescribable, every heartbeat quickened, every movement deliberate, as if the desert itself were holding its breath, watching those who dared to uncover what had been concealed for nearly 2,000 years. Yet, with each potential lead came uncertainty. Some anomalies turned out to be false positives, empty cavities, natural sinkholes, or the remnants of long-forgotten structures unrelated to Cleopatra. Each disappointment intensified the obsession, sharpening the sense that the Queen's final resting place was deliberately designed to resist discovery. Modern scientists began to appreciate the brilliance of the ancient architects, who had anticipated curiosity far beyond their own time. The chambers they built were not just hidden, they were puzzles, designed to challenge those who sought them and reward only those who approached with both intellect and respect. This blend of modern science and ancient ingenuity created a narrative full of suspense. The hunt for Cleopatra's tomb was no longer just a tale of adventure, it was a complex interplay between past and present, between human curiosity and technological capability. Every new image, every subtle radar anomaly, every fragment of inscription added to the tension, as researchers in Egypt and around the world debated their interpretations, formulated strategies, and imagined what might lie behind the sand-covered walls. The desert had revealed enough to tease, but never enough to satisfy completely, leaving a lingering question: just how close are we to uncovering the Queen's final secret? Perhaps the most captivating aspect of these modern expeditions is the sense that history itself is alive, watching the humans who seek to understand it. For centuries, Cleopatra's resting place has been shrouded in myth and legend. Now, equipped with tools she could never have imagined, archaeologists are tracing paths laid down by minds long dead, following the silent instructions of architects who seem to anticipate every challenge. Every chamber, every anomaly, every hidden corridor becomes a piece of a puzzle stretching across time. And yet, the ultimate secret, the tomb of Cleopatra herself, remains elusive, suspended in the tension between what has been discovered and what has yet to be revealed. The search continues, and with each passing season, the stakes grow higher. Teams who have devoted years of their lives to this quest feel the weight of history pressing down upon them, a palpable urgency born of the possibility that they may be the first to uncover what has remained hidden for millennia. Every discovery is celebrated, yet every dead end intensifies the mystery. Cleopatra's tomb is not merely a physical space, it is a narrative, a suspenseful story written in stone, sand, and human ambition. And as the desert stretches endlessly under the blazing sun, it keeps its secrets close, daring the present to meet the ingenuity of the past. Egypt has always been a land of stories that straddle the line between reality and myth, and nowhere is this more evident than in the legends surrounding Cleopatra's hidden chambers. Whispers of treasures beyond imagination, artifacts imbued with both power and mystery, have haunted historians and treasure hunters alike for centuries. Some of these tales speak of golden idols, exquisitely crafted jewelry, and scrolls containing knowledge lost to the ages. Others hint at more sinister secrets, objects that were deliberately concealed because their discovery might have threatened entire dynasties, or revealed truths too dangerous for the world to know. Every fragment of evidence, every rumor, carries with it a sense of awe and unease, a promise that something extraordinary may lie just beneath the sands. Early explorers recorded stories told by local villagers, stories that were dismissed by skeptics as superstition. Yet these tales often pointed to anomalies: a collapsed wall, a strange indentation in the desert, a whisper of a corridor that seemed to appear and vanish with the shifting dunes. Some locals spoke of ancient curses, warnings meant to protect the resting place of the Queen. These curses were often dismissed as folklore, but as history repeatedly proved, legends are rarely born without reason. Explorers who ignored these warnings sometimes returned with accounts of illness, injury, or misfortune. Others simply disappeared, leaving behind only whispered stories of a tomb that seemed alive with the weight of its secrets. Beyond curses and warnings, there were the more tangible hints of treasure, remnants of ceremonial offerings, fragments of statuary, or traces of materials that suggested a chamber of extraordinary wealth. Some historians speculate that Cleopatra's burial site may have contained artifacts that documented her reign in ways no surviving manuscript could. Letters, administrative records, and symbols of political alliances might have been preserved, hidden away to survive the ravages of time. If true, These chambers would offer a window not only into the life of a queen but also into the complexities of a kingdom struggling to maintain independence in the shadow of Rome. The allure of these treasures is as psychological as it is material. For centuries, humans have been drawn to the idea that the past holds secrets that could reshape the present. The thought of unearthing Cleopatra's tomb, of standing within a chamber sealed for nearly 2,000 years, is intoxicating. It is the promise of touching history in a way that transcends books or artifacts on display in museums. It is a connection to a human being, a ruler who once walked among us, whose choices rippled through time. This desire to uncover the hidden, to understand the unknown, has driven archaeologists, adventurers, and scholars alike, often to the brink of obsession. Yet, for every story of treasure, there is a counter-narrative of loss and danger. Ancient chambers are treacherous, filled with booby traps, unstable passages, and concealed pits. It is said that the ancients designed their tombs to deter looters, employing clever mechanisms that could collapse passages or trap intruders forever. These protections were both physical and symbolic. A chamber might have been adorned with inscriptions that warned of spiritual consequences, invoking the wrath of the gods on those who dared to violate the sanctity of the dead. The psychological weight of these warnings has fascinated historians for centuries, blurring the line between superstition and reality, between myth and the practical wisdom of security measures. Stories of cursed artifacts and vanishing treasures abound. In some cases, early explorers claimed to see glimpses of gold that vanished when approached, or shadows that seemed to move across walls in ways that defied logic. In others, delicate fragments of scrolls or statuary disappeared between excavations, lost to the sands or perhaps removed by rivals. Each of these incidents only deepened the mystery, adding layers of intrigue that make the search for Cleopatra's chambers as much a psychological challenge as Some chambers were intentionally misaligned, their angles calculated to mislead anyone who dared approach, a silent warning from a civilization that had mastered both architecture and the art of subterfuge. Walking through these subterranean halls is like stepping into the mind of a queen who understood fear, loyalty, and legend. Imagine the artisans who chiseled every hieroglyph, working by the dim glow of oil lamps, knowing that their work would remain unseen for centuries. Their hands, stained with soot and reverence, etched rituals that would guide souls and confuse the living. Some chambers, designed for ceremonial purposes, were adorned with frescoes depicting Isis, Osiris, and Cleopatra herself, though the depictions were subtle, hidden in plain sight. Every symbol carried meaning, and every corridor served dual purposes, to honor the queen and to mislead potential intruders. Archaeologists now argue that this was less a tomb and more a narrative written in stone, a chronicle meant to be discovered only by those clever enough to interpret it. Certain chambers are built around impossible geometries, walls that curve in ways that seem to contradict Euclidean logic. One room, for instance, appears to have no entrance at all. Sonar scans and 3D reconstructions confirm it, a space perfectly sealed from the outside world, yet entirely hollow inside. Scholars speculate that it may have been a symbolic chamber, a metaphorical journey meant to represent Cleopatra's passage into the afterlife, or perhaps a practical hiding space, inaccessible without the correct keys or knowledge. The uncertainty fuels fascination and dread in equal measure. Who, centuries ago, designed such a thing? And how did they calculate its structure without error, with nothing but primitive tools and an intimate understanding of stone, gravity, and human psychology? Every unanswered question here adds another layer to the suspense, a silent echo of secrets long buried. The air in these subterranean corridors, preserved in some areas by sealed stone doors, carries an almost tangible weight. Archaeologists who descend speak of an oppressive stillness, a presence almost felt more than seen. It is as if the chambers themselves were alive, holding the memories of rituals, the whispers of those who had entered for ceremonies, the unspoken fear of those sworn to protect the queen. Excavations reveal narrow tunnels leading from one chamber to another, passages that twist back on themselves in ways that make it nearly impossible for intruders to reach the inner sanctum without guidance. Some passages are deliberately flooded or partially collapsed, forcing any uninvited guest to turn back. In these spaces, the chambers themselves become characters in the story, guardians, confounders, and witnesses to a secret the world was never meant to see. The hidden chambers were also designed with a sense of ritualized progression. The outer corridors are wide, almost ceremonial, adorned with inscriptions that tell fragmented stories of Cleopatra's reign, her alliances, and her enemies. As one moves inward, the chambers narrow, darker, and more symbolic. Here, the air is cooler, heavier, almost tangible. The walls carry painted hieroglyphs and reliefs of royal decrees, depictions of her as both goddess and mortal, and faint traces of pigments that have endured nearly 2 millennia. Some rooms contain niches where statues once stood, now empty, the precise intention of their placement unknown. Each chamber forces a psychological test on anyone who enters, a puzzle of courage, intellect, and observation. Cleopatra's tomb, scholars argue, was never intended for casual discovery. It was a gauntlet, a test of devotion and understanding, with the ultimate prize known only to those who were loyal to her cause. Even more perplexing are the secretive elements embedded within these chambers. Hidden panels and false walls, designed to deceive even the most determined intruders, have been found in multiple locations. In some cases, the stone slabs seem impossibly balanced, requiring knowledge of levers and counterweights to access the hidden spaces behind them. These chambers reveal a sophistication that rivals, if not surpasses, modern engineering techniques. Some archaeologists suggest that Cleopatra's loyalists may have employed forgotten mathematical principles or methods long lost to time. The effect is both awe-inspiring and unsettling. Every discovery raises more questions than it answers, each chamber a testament to a civilization's understanding of secrecy and psychological manipulation. These hidden features are not random, they are deliberate, a narrative in themselves that challenges anyone who dares to interpret it. Among the most fascinating discoveries is a room believed to have been designed as a ritualistic, waiting chamber, for the queen's soul. Here, the walls are inscribed with prayers and incantations meant to guide the deceased through the afterlife. The ceilings are painted with constellations, aligning with the night sky at the time of her death. Some researchers argue this indicates Cleopatra's obsession with astrology and her belief in cosmic guidance. Every design choice in this chamber, from the layout to the smallest hieroglyph, is intentional, blending artistry, spirituality, and security. It is a space that both honors and protects, a chamber as much about the living who maintain the tomb as the queen herself. The complexity of this room underscores a profound truth: Cleopatra's death was not an end, but a calculated continuation of her influence, extending her power into eternity. As archaeologists dig deeper, they uncover traces of materials not native to the immediate area, imported stones, pigments, and metals, hinting at a resource network spanning the Mediterranean. This suggests a level of planning, secrecy, and logistics that few historians fully appreciate. These chambers were not hastily prepared, they were the product of years of foresight, planning, and devotion. The people who built them risked life and reputation to create a tomb that would outlast centuries of political turmoil, floods, and conquest. Every stone, every carving, every misaligned passage reflects that deliberate purpose, a silent narrative of loyalty and ingenuity. And yet, for all its grandeur, much remains undiscovered. These chambers still hold secrets, some possibly beyond modern comprehension, whispering an invitation to those bold enough to continue the descent. Even today, the chambers inspire both awe and dread. Archaeologists and historians who explore them speak of a psychological weight, a creeping sense that they are walking through spaces designed not just for the dead, but for the living who would follow. The chambers act as both a protective cocoon and a trap, preserving history while ensuring that only the worthy, or the desperate, can reach the inner sanctums. And just when the mind thinks it understands the structure, another corridor twists, another false wall conceals a secret passage, another chamber defies logic. Cleopatra's tomb is not merely a physical space, it is a testament to strategy, devotion, and a mastery of secrecy that continues to confound and captivate. The hidden chambers themselves become storytellers, each stone a line of dialogue, each shadow a foreshadowing, leaving those who explore them with more questions than answers, and a sense that history's greatest secrets may still slumber behind walls no living eye has fully seen. The modern investigators who have dedicated their lives to uncovering Cleopatra's hidden chambers are a study in obsession, brilliance, and vulnerability. These are not mere archaeologists, they are detectives, dreamers, and sometimes, haunted souls driven by a mixture of curiosity and reverence. Each one carries a personal story, a memory, a failure, a whispered ambition, that binds them to this mystery more tightly than any contractual duty or academic pursuit. For some, the search began in childhood, inspired by dusty books and dramatic tales of the Queen. For others, it emerged later, fueled by frustration at history's gaps and an almost compulsive need to rewrite what is believed to be fact. Walking through Alexandria, past layers of civilization both ruined and preserved, they feel a peculiar intimacy with Cleopatra, as though tracing her steps might somehow bridge nearly 2 millennia of silence. The first challenges are logistical, yet emotionally taxing. Excavating beneath the shifting sands of Egypt, diving into submerged ruins, and interpreting fragmented hieroglyphs requires more than technical skill, it demands resilience under constant uncertainty. One archaeologist, a woman who has spent decades on the Taposiris Magna site, describes the feeling as walking through time without a map, where every find could be either a breakthrough or a cruel mirage. Her colleagues have learned to brace for disappointment. A promising tunnel collapses, a newly exposed chamber leads nowhere, a papyrus fragment turns out to be a forgery. Each setback chips away at morale, but also deepens their obsession. There is a psychological toll here, sleepless nights haunted by imagined chambers, dreams where hieroglyphs whisper secrets, and the gnawing fear that the tomb may never be found in their lifetime. Some investigators carry an almost personal vendetta against history itself. They are determined not merely to locate Cleopatra's final resting place, but to reclaim a narrative deliberately erased. The modern search is interwoven with ethical dilemmas. Who deserves to uncover these secrets? Should any tomb be disturbed? Some insist that even if Cleopatra's remains are found, they must be left undisturbed, preserved as a testament to her life and the genius of her loyalists. Others argue that humanity cannot ignore such discoveries, that the world has the right to witness her legacy firsthand. This tension, between reverence and curiosity, feeds dramatic conflict within the team, creating relationships as complicated as the labyrinthine chambers they hope to explore. Personal rivalries often flare under the weight of obsession. Two leading archaeologists, each with decades of field experience, have clashed repeatedly over methods, interpretations, and territorial claims. Their arguments are intense, sometimes bitter, but always carried with the weight of genuine passion for the discovery. One insists on meticulous excavation techniques, prioritizing preservation, the other pushes for modern technological interventions, drones, sonar, 3D scanning, to accelerate the hunt. Each debate exposes not only professional differences but deep-seated fears, fear of failure, fear of history passing them by, fear that someone else might claim the prize they've chased for decades. These dynamics add human tension to the narrative, reminding viewers that the hunt for Cleopatra's tomb is not merely academic, but profoundly personal. Then there are the divers who plunge into the sunken ruins of Alexandria and Heracleion, risking life and limb for a chance glimpse of the past. Submerged temples, silted corridors, and unstable stone formations make each dive a trial of endurance, courage, and trust in technology. One diver recounts moments where walls of sand shifted beneath him, sending choking clouds into the water, erasing visibility, and making it impossible to navigate back. He describes the silence underwater as suffocating yet sacred, as if the chambers themselves were alive, observing him, testing his worth. Such peril amplifies suspense. Every descent could reveal the Queen's resting place, or become the last dive of a lifetime. These divers are haunted, sometimes traumatized, yet compelled by the almost mystical presence that lingers in these forgotten spaces. Amid the physical challenges, intellectual and emotional puzzles emerge. Inscriptions must be deciphered, hieroglyphs cross-referenced, and architectural anomalies interpreted. One historian tells of sleepless nights spent staring at photographs of collapsed walls, convinced that hidden chambers lie behind the rubble, accessible only through careful observation. Frustration is constant, each clue is tantalizingly incomplete, like a story missing half its sentences. Yet small victories fuel hope. A fragment of a papyrus might align with a submerged pillar, a previously overlooked symbol could reveal a doorway. Each discovery, however minor, carries immense emotional weight, as if Cleopatra herself is responding to those who persist, testing their devotion and intellect. The investigators' humanity, their doubt, awe, fear, and obsession, becomes a narrative in itself, a reflection of the timeless power of the queen they pursue. The investigation is also haunted by disappearances and mysteries of its own. One researcher, after claiming to find a critical clue in the labyrinth, vanished without explanation, leaving behind only a journal filled with cryptic notes and sketches. His colleagues are torn between grief, suspicion, and curiosity, unsure whether his disappearance was accidental, deliberate, or related to forces beyond comprehension. Such incidents infuse the hunt with real danger, blurring the line between historical exploration and true crime. The chambers, it seems, exert influence even on the modern world, challenging those who dare approach them, forcing them to confront not only the past but their own limitations and mortality. Throughout this obsession, the team develops almost ritualized routines. At sunrise, they traverse the temple ruins in silence, paying homage to history and preparing for the day's excavation. At night, they gather to analyze findings by lantern or laptop, debating interpretations, poring over digital reconstructions, and recounting near misses from dives or collapses. Emotional bonds form, strengthened by shared risk and common purpose. Yet tension lingers, trust is fragile, and the shadow of potential failure is omnipresent. The chambers, with all their ingenuity and secrecy, continue to manipulate time itself, demanding patience, cunning, and courage from those who seek to reveal their secrets. Every failed attempt, every silted tunnel, and every misinterpreted symbol only heightens the sense that Cleopatra's resting place is a carefully guarded enigma. Modern investigators are drawn in because they cannot help but feel that finding the tomb is not simply about discovery, it is about connection. They are, in a sense, walking alongside history, feeling the weight of centuries in their bones, and glimpsing the queen not as a myth, but as a real human being whose life, death, and legacy continue to ripple across time. Their stories add an emotional richness that balances the technical and historical aspects of the search, turning each expedition into a psychological and cinematic journey. And then there are the moments that defy explanation. Instruments detect voids behind walls that should be solid, sonar reveals corridors where none were mapped, diverse report glimpses of structures not recorded in any known map. Each anomaly builds suspense and hints at the possibility that the tomb, or something equally extraordinary, may still lie hidden, untouched by looters, untouched by time. The investigators know the risk, their discoveries could change history, elevate Cleopatra's story, or expose truths that could shake the foundations of Egyptology. Yet, despite the danger and uncertainty, they press on, compelled by obsession, curiosity, and the almost spiritual allure of touching history where it has slept for nearly 2,000 years. In these investigators, the audience sees both themselves and the queen, daring, determined, and yet vulnerable to the unpredictable forces of time and fate. Each expedition, dive, and excavation becomes a narrative thread, interwoven with tension, emotion, and suspense. Cleopatra's hidden chambers are not simply a quest for knowledge, they are a mirror reflecting the human desire to understand, to conquer the unknown, and to connect with a past that continues to whisper secrets. As the explorers inch closer to potential discovery, the audience is left hanging on every detail, every rumor, and every hint, drawn irresistibly toward the next revelation, knowing that the next chapter may bring triumph, terror, or a truth more astonishing than anyone could imagine. The breakthrough clues emerged slowly, each one like a whisper from the past, teasing investigators with fragments of a story nearly erased. For centuries, the sands and waters of Egypt had conspired to keep Cleopatra's resting place hidden, yet tiny remnants, inscriptions, papyri fragments, tomb markers, began to surface, fragile threads connecting the present to a queen's final secret. Archaeologists who unearthed them described the thrill as almost unbearable, each artifact a tangible heartbeat of history, a momentary bridge across nearly 2 millennia. Some of the most tantalizing were the inscriptions, cryptic symbols etched in stone, often obscured by age or deliberate defacement. They referenced royal rituals, hints of funerary pathways, and even coded mentions of chambers beneath Taposiris Magna. Yet interpretation was never straightforward. The language was a hybrid of Egyptian, Greek, and early Roman influences, reflecting the cultural collision of Cleopatra's era. Every deciphered line seemed to reveal a question rather than an answer. Among the most compelling finds were tomb markers, partially buried in silt and rubble, that bore stylized carvings of the queen herself. These markers were not merely decorative, they were carefully coded guides, possibly indicating hidden passages or ceremonial chambers. Scholars argue that these markers acted as a map for those loyal enough to recognize the symbols. Yet the markers were inconsistent, sometimes misaligned or placed deceptively to confuse potential intruders. For those decoding them, it was a test of intellect, intuition, and patience. One archaeologist recounted spending weeks analyzing a single fragment, only to discover it contained the outline of a subterranean corridor, previously unknown, hidden beneath centuries of sediment and myth. Each tiny breakthrough fueled obsession, but also intensified frustration. Every clue seemed to multiply the mystery rather than resolve it. Equally enigmatic were the papyrus fragments discovered in Alexandria's lesser-known archives and private collections. Some were lost letters, written by temple priests, others were excerpts of administrative records hinting at royal burials. One fragment described the ritual handling of a queen's remains, noting in precise, almost obsessive detail the protective measures taken to prevent desecration. The language suggested an awareness that Rome would stop at nothing to obliterate Cleopatra's legacy. These fragments, however, were incomplete, riddled with gaps where time or human interference had erased key phrases. Historians worked to piece together meaning through context, cross-referencing with Greek and Roman accounts, yet ambiguity persisted. Every interpretation opened new questions. Did the instructions lead to a hidden chamber under the temple, beneath the waters, or somewhere else entirely? The ambiguity was deliberate, a puzzle designed to endure across centuries. Some clues defied traditional logic. A series of faint etchings, found in the submerged ruins of Heracleion, appeared to correspond with astronomical events. Investigators hypothesized that these symbols were not merely decorative but functioned as celestial markers, aligning the tomb with specific constellations or solstices. This would have served multiple purposes: spiritual guidance for the queen's journey into the afterlife and an additional layer of concealment, as only those knowledgeable in astrology could accurately follow the map. The implications were staggering. If correct, Cleopatra's tomb was not just hidden geographically but temporally, encoded in the rhythms of the cosmos. The idea that a resting place could be concealed in alignment with the stars captivated and unnerved archaeologists, hinting at an intelligence and foresight that was nothing short of extraordinary. The lost records themselves were equally haunting. Accounts from Roman historians suggested that Cleopatra's body vanished without a trace after her death, fueling centuries of speculation and rumor. Some records hinted that loyal priests orchestrated a deceptive burial to confuse looters, leaving a decoy in one location while the queen's true remains were transported elsewhere. Yet these accounts were often contradictory, the result of Roman bias, misinterpretation, or deliberate misinformation. Modern investigators had to sift through layers of propaganda, false reports, and fragmented evidence. Each recovered record added a layer of complexity, a new path to explore, yet no single clue provided certainty. The challenge was immense. A single misread symbol or mistranslation could lead teams down decades-long dead ends. Adding to the suspense were inexplicable anomalies in the physical evidence. A tomb fragment discovered at Taposiris Magna bore an inscription that had no known linguistic parallel, ancient symbols that resisted translation despite the expertise of Egyptologists and classicists alike. Some suggested these could be symbolic placeholders, a coded message only comprehensible to Cleopatra's inner circle. Others feared that they might indicate a trap or a warning. The uncertainty kept investigators on edge, forcing them to balance reverence with pragmatism, cautious in their excavation while driven by a sense of urgency. Every discovery seemed to carry both promise and danger. One wrong move could collapse centuries-old chambers, or worse, mislead the search entirely. One of the most dramatic moments came when researchers discovered what appeared to be a deliberate alignment of artifacts, pottery shards, fragments of statues, and pieces of stone that, when mapped carefully, formed a pathway pointing to a submerged corridor. The pattern was subtle, almost imperceptible, requiring the collaboration of archaeologists, engineers, and divers to verify. Some skeptics dismissed it as coincidence, yet those who had studied Cleopatra's tombs for decades believed it was intentional. The emotional tension was palpable. Each team member carried the dual weight of hope and fear, knowing that if this alignment were correct, it could represent the closest humanity had come to finding the Queen's resting place in centuries. The discovery created a fragile consensus. This might be the breakthrough, yet caution was paramount. Centuries of traps and misdirection had prepared the tomb to remain hidden for eternity. Even more tantalizing were the inscriptions that appeared to reference rituals performed only once every decade, possibly linked to celestial events or temple ceremonies. This suggested that the Queen's resting place might only be partially accessible during certain times, intentionally timed with astronomical phenomena. Modern investigators scrambled to correlate these rituals with historical timelines, piecing together a map that spanned both space and time. The suspense built as they realized the complexity of the design. Cleopatra's tomb might have been intended to defy discovery for thousands of years, to remain a secret unless approached with knowledge, patience, and devotion. Every discovery, every fragment, deepened the sense that they were not simply excavating, they were deciphering a code left by a mind centuries ahead of its time. Yet even as breakthroughs came, contradictions abounded. Some markers suggested one location, while others pointed elsewhere. Inscriptions on submerged walls conflicted with those on land, as if the tomb had multiple layers, some terrestrial, some submerged. Investigators were forced to entertain theories that bordered on the improbable, that Cleopatra's body might be divided, or that decoys were intentionally placed to confuse pursuers. Each possibility carried emotional weight, stirring both awe and dread. The mystery was no longer linear, it was a maze, a multidimensional puzzle designed to challenge intellect, patience, and courage across generations. And so, with every inscription, tomb marker, and papyrus fragment, the stakes rose. The investigators understood that they were part of a continuum, following a path laid by loyal priests and architects nearly 2,000 years ago. Each new clue brought the tantalizing possibility of revelation, but also the lingering fear of misinterpretation. The chambers remained elusive, their secrets carefully encoded, yet the breakthrough clues had begun to weave a narrative that was both compelling and unnerving. Every fragment hinted at a story that demanded to be told, yet refused to give itself fully, leaving modern explorers, and the audience, on the edge of discovery, teetering between triumph and the eternal unknown. The most controversial theory surrounding Cleopatra's final resting place suggests that she chose, or was placed in, a tomb beneath the sea, an idea that has fascinated scholars, divers, and treasure hunters alike for decades. At first glance, it seems implausible. How could a queen of such power and renown, with a kingdom built on the Nile, end her life beneath shifting waters, far from the temples and palaces she once ruled? Yet the more evidence modern investigators uncover, the more this possibility demands consideration. Sonar scans of the submerged ruins of Alexandria and Heracleion have revealed large, void-like structures beneath layers of silt, chambers that align with fragments of inscriptions and markings previously found on land. The theory suggests a deliberate design, a protective measure to keep Cleopatra's remains hidden from looters and political rivals who would stop at nothing to erase her memory. Those who support this theory argue that Cleopatra, always a master of strategy and optics, may have envisioned her tomb as a final act of political theater. By sinking her resting place beneath the sea, she would place it beyond the reach of Rome, beyond the grasp of casual historians, and into a realm that would test the dedication and skill of anyone who dared seek her. The logistics of such a burial are staggering. Archaeologists have pointed out that it would require advanced engineering, including water-resistant chambers, pressure calculations, and methods to preserve the body against decay in a semi-submerged environment. Some suggest that ancient Egyptians' knowledge of hydraulics and stonework, combined with their spiritual understanding of the Nile's cycles, could have made such a feat possible. The challenge is immense, but so is the potential reward, a tomb preserved not just physically but strategically, a monument to Cleopatra's intellect and foresight. The emotional stakes of this theory are compelling. Divers who venture into the submerged ruins often report feelings of unease and awe. Descending into the water is like stepping into another world, one where time behaves differently and the echoes of history are tangible. Some recount hearing hollow sounds that seem too deliberate to be natural, as if the chambers themselves are communicating with the living. These underwater explorers face not only physical danger, unstable structures, low visibility, and shifting silt, but also a psychological burden. They become part of a centuries-old narrative, tracing steps that may have been laid out specifically to test the resolve of those who pursue them. The sea becomes both protector and antagonist, guarding the queen's secret while challenging every attempt at discovery. Adding to the intrigue is the possibility that Cleopatra's tomb was designed to be partially visible at intervals, only accessible during specific tidal or celestial conditions. Ancient texts and newly deciphered fragments hint at rituals performed during certain phases of the moon, aligning with astronomical events, suggesting that the tomb could be approached at specific times. The precision required for such a design is staggering, implying a collaboration between architects, astronomers, and priests who understood the rhythms of both the heavens and the Nile. For modern investigators, this raises both hope and frustration. Every dive must be carefully timed, every sonar scan planned with astronomical precision, yet the results are often ambiguous, leaving tantalizing hints that promise revelation but rarely deliver immediate answers. The controversy surrounding the theory has sparked heated debate among scholars. Skeptics argue that such a burial is improbable, pointing to the technical challenges and the lack of concrete historical records confirming a submerged tomb. Some suggest that the voids discovered underwater are natural, not man-made, and that the alignment with inscriptions is coincidental. Others counter that the meticulous planning evident in Cleopatra's known burial arrangements, combined with the political climate following her death, makes the possibility more than plausible. The debate is intensified by modern politics, legal restrictions, and the ethics of underwater archaeology. Even if a tomb exists beneath the sea, excavating it could be catastrophic, potentially destroying centuries of artifacts and environmental context. The tension between curiosity and preservation creates a suspenseful narrative that mirrors the labyrinthine chambers themselves. One diver recalls the moment when a sonar sweep revealed a chamber-like structure deeper than any previously explored. The team had theorized that if Cleopatra's tomb existed underwater, it would be at a depth that had historically prevented human exploration. The scan revealed a void consistent with man-made construction, rectangular shapes, aligned walls, and indications of an entrance sealed from the outside. The exhilaration among the team was palpable, yet it was tempered by fear. The chamber lay beneath unstable sediment, and any attempt at entry could trigger collapse or entrapment. In that moment, the line between myth and reality blurred, and the team understood that they were on the precipice of potentially rewriting history, or confirming a theory that might never be proven conclusively. Adding to the mystery is the presence of artifacts that seem deliberately misplaced or partially buried. Some stone fragments, inscribed with cryptic symbols matching those found on land, were discovered at seemingly random locations underwater. Researchers theorize that these fragments were designed to mislead looters or casual explorers, guiding them away from the true tomb or giving the impression of discovery while preserving the ultimate secret. The ingenuity is staggering. Even in death, Cleopatra's resting place may have been engineered as a test of intellect, patience, and devotion, rewarding only those willing to interpret the subtle signals correctly. The labyrinthine complexity mirrors the psychological traps found in the chambers on land, reinforcing the idea that her tomb was as much about concealment and challenge as it was about burial. The implications of a submerged tomb are profound. If Cleopatra's body truly rests beneath the sea, untouched for nearly 2 millennia, the discovery would not merely be an archaeological achievement, it would alter the narrative of history itself. It would challenge assumptions about Egyptian engineering, Roman influence, and Cleopatra's own foresight. Modern historians would be forced to re-evaluate accounts of her death and burial, reconsidering the possibility that she orchestrated her final act with the same cunning that defined her reign. For the investigators, the potential discovery carries a weight beyond science. They are tasked with not only locating a tomb but interpreting the legacy of a queen who may have transcended life, death, and time itself. Every dive, every scan, every clue is a step toward an answer that has eluded the world for centuries. And yet, for all its promise, the theory remains tantalizingly incomplete. The chambers lie beneath layers of silt and saltwater, hidden from view, protected by centuries of natural and human forces. Every sonar signal, every fragment, every legend is a tantalizing hint rather than proof. The investigators are left suspended between hope and uncertainty, caught in a rhythm of anticipation and frustration. The sea itself becomes a character in this narrative, its currents shifting both literally and metaphorically, guarding Cleopatra's secret while luring the living into obsession. Modern technology may provide unprecedented access, but it also underscores the enormity of the challenge, emphasizing the centuries of secrecy and the meticulous planning that ensured the Queen's legacy remained tantalizingly out of reach. As the team prepares for further exploration, the tension reaches its peak. Every dive, every scan, every interpretation carries the weight of centuries of expectation, risk, and curiosity. The controversial theory that Cleopatra lies beneath the sea may never be proven conclusively, yet it propels the narrative forward with relentless suspense. Each new discovery, each anomaly, is a reminder that history is never truly fixed, that secrets, once buried, can challenge human understanding across millennia. And in the silence of the submerged ruins, the presence of a queen, both real and mythic, continues to haunt the waters, daring anyone bold enough to confront her secrets and unravel a story that has slept beneath the waves for nearly 2,000 years.